Hello, everybody, and welcome along to today's webinar. My name is Calvin, and I will be your host and presenter for today. And the subject is going to be on payments and deductions. I'm joined as well by my colleague Duncan, who will be on hand to answer any questions that you may have. However, I will just add that there are quite a lot of you and only one of him at the moment, so we may be a little bit delayed in getting the answer to you, but we will certainly try our best to get those answers out as soon as we can. That being said, let's move into the presentation itself. So we go over what we're covering today. So it is quite a short session. We are scheduled to have about half an hour, 45 minutes, but we will probably most likely not need that amount of time. But we will spend some time at the end answering any remaining questions and make sure we've got them all answered for you. The first thing we're going to cover is looking at setting up payments and deductions. So we're going to have a look at setting up the payments and deductions for each type. So there are some various settings in each type that we'll go through, and we'll be live demoing them as well. We're then going to have a look at how you can assign payments and deductions to your employees. So there are a couple of ways to do this depending at which stage you're in the payroll program. So you can do it at multiple stages. So we'll go through that as well. We do have a 3-question quiz at the end as well, which will be testing some knowledge there as well. And like I mentioned, we'll spend a bit of time at the end going through all the available further support that you have, as well as answering any remaining questions that you might have. So that's what we'll be covering in today's session. So without further ado, let's get stuck into it. And we'll start off with setting up some payments and deductions. So we're going to be live demoing a couple of these. So firstly, let's have a look at the various types of payments. So you have, of course, your gross payment. So paying employees an amount that tax and NI will be deducted from. So that is your standard payment, salary, wages, even bonuses, for example, will usually use this type of payment. You then, of course, have your net payment. So this is where you may want to pay your employees an exact amount that they will receive. So for example, this is quite popular over Christmas, where you want to give your employees exactly an amount of £500, for example. And that's deducted after the tax and NI. Now, as the payment is still taxable in national insurance, a net payment will recalculate or reverse calculate the national insurance and tax that would be needed in order to get that net amount. And that way your employees will walk away with exactly £500. And then finally, you have, of course, a non-taxable payment. So any payments that are not subject to tax and national insurance. So believe it or not, they do exist out there. Of course, we always advise if you're unsure of whether it is taxable or not, it is worth checking with HMRC. So those are the payments. And before we jump into the demo, let's just run through the types of deductions. So the first one is your net deduction. So this is where you would simply deduct an amount from the employee's net pay. Again, these are the most common deductions that you will see. You also have salary sacrifices. So there are salary sacrifice schemes out there, and you can set up a salary sacrifice within the program, and we'll show you that as well. And this simply reduces the employee's gross pay. And there are attachment of earnings as part of deductions, but we are having a separate webinar all about attachment of earnings, which is happening in a couple of weeks' time. So again, if you'd like to see any more on attachment of earnings, by all means, register to that. We're not going to be covering attachment of earnings because we have a full webinar dedicated just to that one subject. So you might want to have a look and get registered for that one. Okay, what we'll do now is let's jump into the program, and we'll go through the settings of the payments first of all, and then we'll have a look at setting up some deductions as well. So here we are in our Sage 50 Cloud Payroll. So the first thing we want to do is set up a couple of payments. So we're going to go into company in the bottom left, then we are going to go to pay elements. And in here you will see we have various tabs across the top: payments, deductions, loans, of course, as well. Attachments of earnings orders, your net payments, and salary sacrifice, all available here. We will focus on payments first. So we'll go through the easy one, if you want to call it that, which is your standard gross payment. So we've got a couple set up here already. So if I just quickly edit that one, you can see we have a number of tick boxes. So firstly, you can give it a description. That can be whatever you want, but it will appear as that on the payslip. So please bear in mind when you are naming your pay elements. And then you will have the payment is subject to. And these are the various tick boxes in what the payment is going to be subjected to. So you have, of course, PAYE and national insurance. Then you have it if it's subject to a salary sacrifice for pension only. So for any of you who have a salary sacrifice pension, make sure that your pay elements that you are wanting to be pensionable are ticked with this box here. The next is qualifying earnings and regular pensions and regular pension average additional voluntary contributions, not average, so AVCs. So again, if you want that payment to be subject for these three, you must then tick those as well. Again, qualifying earnings all comes into pensionable pay. If you're not sure about that, then again, we have had a webinar, so there is a recording of it, all about pensions and calculations, and qualifying earnings is explained in that. And then, of course, you have various attachments, which is your community charge, council tax, and then any other attachment of earnings. So for basic pay, 9 times out of 10, they will have to have all of these boxes ticked usually. But again, it all depends on the payment. So you can see there that the settings give you full autonomy to create a payment the way that you want it to be created and be subject to the things that you require it to be subject to. Again, there are a couple of extra tick boxes, but we do cover these in later webinars as well, such as the minimum wage or minimum living wage, as it were. The word was a bit difficult for me there, as well as holidays, weekly averages, and of course timesheet entries as well. We're not going to go into them in too much detail because, as I mentioned, we will have in the future some webinars that cover those in more detail. The last thing I want to draw your attention to in this page is your variable option at the top, or the status. And you'll see here, if I select the drop down, we have got 4 options. Variable is the most common, so this is where your hours and rates can be edited in enter payments as you go through and enter your employee's pay. Fixed, as it says, is a fixed amount, so it cannot be changed in the enter payments and can only be changed either here or in the employee's record. Global, again, similar to fixed, however, it can only be changed on a global, so for everyone at once, not individually. And then you have factor. Now what I'll do is let me just go into factor in a bit more detail for you. So if I close out of this and we open up and edit the overtime option, you'll see here we have a factored payment. Now this again is a gross pay, so it is going to be subject to PAYE and national insurance. But what it is doing is it is going to be calculated based on one of the other pay elements. So you see here we have the description. Of course, you can call it what you like. So we've got overtime time and a half, or 1.5. And this is based on the salary. So if I drop that down, you'll see how we've got our salary, which is a pay element that is built within the program if you're entering salary details. And you have bonus or basic, so the other 2 pay elements that we have set up. Here we have our multiplier, so it is going to multiply the salary by 1.5, and that is going to be the factor element. So in essence, it's attached to the salary, and when you enter in a number of hours or a rate, it will multiply that by time and a half to ensure that it is calculating the right amount for you. So that is your gross payment options. As I mentioned, there is quite a lot of tick boxes in there, as you saw. Again, this is all going to be dependent on how you want that payment to be functioning and how you want it to calculate in essence and what factors it is going to be subjected to. The next thing to look at is our net payments. So if I click on our net payments tab, here's one we made earlier. If you'd like to create a new one, it is simply the new button. Let us edit that one now. So again, we can select it as variable so that we can edit it in the enter payment screen if needs be. We've given it a description of net pay. There's 2 additional options here, and this is what the payment is going to be adjusted for. So as I mentioned, it reverse calculates the national insurance and the tax. You can choose it to just simply reverse calculate the tax, and it will still be subjected to national insurance in the normal way. Or you can do it to reverse calculate. I'm not even sure if that's a sentence, if I'm honest, but that's the best way to describe it. But reverse calculate the employee's tax and national insurance, which is what we're going to select for this example. And then again, the same tick boxes are required. Now, as you can see, when we have selected employees' tax and national insurance, we already know that it's going to be subject to tax and national insurance, so they are grayed out. If I were to click employees' tax, you can see we can now untick national insurance if we needed to. And that is your net payments. So before I jump into enter payments and show you all these in action, let's just quickly hover over to deductions and we'll show you setting up them. Very, very similar in the way that payments are set up, except the options are slightly different. So we have a deduction here. Again, we've given it a name and we selected the status as variable so that I can amend it through enter payments as I am entering our employee's pay. Except this time we have deduct this value before calculating. So we mentioned that you have net deductions. So in essence, if these are unticked, it will deduct after calculating all of these. So this is your standard net deduction. So this will deduct that amount from a net, the employee's net pay. You can, of course, change this so that it is deducting from the gross pay. And this is all dependent on how you would like that deduction to show. So we'll show you a copy of a payslip as well to show you the various different ways that these appear on the payslip. But ultimately, any deductions will appear in the deductions column, and any negative payments or salary sacrifices will appear in the payments column. So if you want it to show, instead of doing a negative payment, you want it to show in the deductions column, you'd set up a gross deduction. And that is just by ticking all the boxes that you need to do right here. Again, it is all up to you guys and how you want your deductions and payments to be calculating. As I mentioned earlier, there isn't really a right or wrong in this essence. It's just about checking with HMRC whether specific payments need to be subject to this or that. There are that many different payments out there these days that it can get a little confusing. So again, best advice there is always double check with HMRC if you're ever unsure what they are subject to. So that's your standard deduction, net deduction. The next one, or the last one before we start looking at them in enter payments, is your salary sacrifice options. Now again, we have one here. We're going to create a new one. So not too much to it, because again, you'll be entering the amount in enter payments, but you can give this a description. So we have one for childcare vouchers, which again, you would tick that tick box there. This one, however, is going to be for a cycle to work scheme. So we'll click OK. And there we have our salary sacrifice created. So there isn't too much to that. Okay, so as promised, let's have a look at these payments and deductions in action. So here we can see our employees. So we've got employee 1. You can see here we have their overtime. So you've got the multiplier, which is 1.5 already, which is calculated the rate based on the salary already. We have our bonus and we have our salary. If I go over to deductions, you'll see we have our salary sacrifice already here. Now, no spoilers here because I'm not going to be adding one just yet, covering that in assigning payments and deductions. But you'll see here you can amend the amount because it's set as variable. Any attachments you have will, of course, appear here. And then if we head on over to the summary tab, you'll be able to see all the various deductions and payments that you have on the screen. So that's the payments and deductions and setting them up. So again, fairly straightforward. The next step, if I go back to our presentation, it's going to be all about assigning those payments and deductions. Now, you may have already seen a little bit of a clue there when we went into enter payments as to one way, but there are in fact a couple of different ways. So you've got some screenshots here. You have this through the employee record, so you can add payments and deductions via the employee record. Or you can add it through enter payments, as we've just seen. There is, of course, a third way, which is via global changes. So this is where you might want to add a payment or deduction to all of your employees at once. Again, Christmas is usually the most common time this occurs. where you'll be adding a Christmas bonus, for example. You'll be wanting to add that to every single employee within your business. So let's have a look at some of those, and we'll show you how to assign those payments once you've set them up. So back we go to our program. We'll start, because we're already there, with the enter payments option. So to add a payment, it is simply clicking the button that says add payment. Fairly self-explanatory on that one. We'll ignore that particular message about the pension scheme, as I've been playing around with them. However, here we are in our pay elements section. So you'll see we've got various different tabs across the top again. In this sense, we're going to add a net payment. So we're going to click on the blank line. Then you have the little arrow. That will open up the drop-down menu. And then it's about selecting your payment from there. Select the payment, click OK, and it will appear in this list. Now that it has, I can just hit the Save button, and you'll see our net payment has appeared. Tax and NI shows as net, and we have this new line called Cost of Net Payments. And if I was to enter a value in here, so if you take note of their current net pay and hit the £1,000, and then don't forget the hours, a number of 1. You'll see that it has increased by exactly £1,000, but up here it has calculated how much tax and national insurance it would need in order to produce £1,000 on the net pay. So in essence, it will have cost £1,457.88 in order to give that employee £1,000. So that's how the net payment works. As I mentioned, you get this additional line for cost of net payments. We'll head on over now to deductions. And in this sense, we're going to add one. You'll see here we have none. So we're going to use the import option. And this is post and post. So this is after tax and national insurance. So this is a net deduction. And then again, hit save. And you will see that deduction has appeared here. So apologies there, my payroll seems to have disappeared on me. Let me bring that back up for you. Luckily, we have the screenshot there, which is what we were just showing you. So that's always going to be helpful. And let me just reopen payroll. It's always the beauty of live events. As you know, technical difficulties can occur. So if you're ever curious about, is this a recording or am I real? Then yes, this is actually happening in real time. Again, we will just jump into our program and I'll get back to where we were. And here we are. Let's make sure the process date was the same. So we were doing August. So I'm slightly a month behind. Apologies on that one. We'll jump back into enter payments. Make sure we've selected our employees. And we're back. So there we go. Apologies about that. Okay, so we were at deductions. You can see our import deduction has in fact been added. So if I would again to deduct, we'll go with, to make it nice and easy, get a round figure for that employee. You'll see now that that has come off their net pay rather than their gross pay. So we have simply deducted that £274.21 in order to make sure the employee has a net pay of £3,000. Careless attachments again will appear on this screen, but as I mentioned earlier, we do have a separate webinar specifically for attachments. Salary sacrifice we already have set up. So just to show you this, you'll see that we have £100 for the childcare vouchers. It's the same process to add cycle to work scheme, for example, except you won't be doing it in the deductions tab. You will be doing it in the salary sacrifice tab. See there we have the two set up. They will appear as a negative payment on the payslip, which again I will briefly show you once we've assigned everything we need to. And again, you'll see that salary sacrifice in the summary line at the bottom, which happens on all 4 of the first tabs. You have an additional column for salary sacrifice amount. And that is our employees' payments and deductions assigned to them through Enter Payments. There are 2 other ways, as I mentioned, so let's quickly look at those. So we can do this in the employee record. So here we are. In the employment tab, you have a button down here that says Pay Elements. And again, it's as simple as selecting them from the drop down. So it's a very similar screen to what we just showed you, and just entering them in a slightly different place. It all depends on at which point you are in the payroll process as to where you can enter them. So if you forgot or you've been told about one last minute and you're in the enter payment screen, you can quickly add it there. If you're in the middle of setting up a new employee, or you know that this employee is going to have this for a specific period, you can then do it in the employee record and then enter the amounts when you get to the enter payment screen. The other way, if it will allow me to show you, is the global changes option. Now the global changes will add a payment or a deduction to all of your employees or some of your employees all at once, which obviously then saves you a bit of time. And I seem to have lost my payroll program again. I do apologize. Let's get that back up so I can quickly show you the global changes. Ideal, as I mentioned, if you're offering your entire business or as even a specific department, perhaps a specific bonus or payment that is going to everyone and not just 1 or 2 people. So of course, if you have departments set up, you can just group them up into one group and add them via the global changes that way. You can also remove payments and deductions via global changes in the same manner. One quick note, because I do get asked this quite a lot, is about deleting pay elements. So there isn't actually a limit to how many pay elements you can have. However, it's highly recommended you don't have a vast amount, as that increases the data size and can cause the program to run slower than it should be. So try and limit the amount of pay elements you have. But if you need to delete any, the best time to do it is at the start of the new tax year when the pay element has no year-to-date values. So you must make sure it has not been used at all for the current tax year. Then you must make sure that it is not assigned to anyone, and then you'll be able to delete that pay element via the pay elements settings. Okay, so we're back in payroll. Show you that global change now. So we'll go to tasks at the top, global changes. Again, common one, don't go to pay element. We're going to go to payments or deductions. We'll go ahead and we will add a payment. So if I click add payment and put the net payment one, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. We've got 10 employees selected. 9 records have been updated. The reason it's 9 is because we added that to that 1 employee at the start, so they don't need it added again. And again, if I pop quickly and enter payments, I am in a different tax period, so the figures may have changed, but just to show you, you will see now that employee 2 has the net payment there, as does employee 3. So that's it. That's all there is to it when it comes to assigning your payments to your employees, as well as deleting them. Now, I promised to show you what a payslip looks like with your payments on. So let me just run it for employee number 1. So I'm just going to use a standard laser printed payslip. We'll preview that. And we'll show you the payslip appearing. There it is. So you can see there, the payslip has got all of the deductions that we've added. So that import deduction is there as well in the deductions section. And we have our salary sacrifice, which appears as a negative payment. And we have the net payment there as well. You'll notice there are 2 lines for the net payment. So it's showing the employee that you are giving them £1,000, but it is also showing how much that £1,000 cost. So they are technically getting an extra £457.88 in order for them to have £1,000 net pay. Again, this is what a payslip would look like with those variety of payments and deductions added. Okay, so that pretty much wraps it up. I did mention it wasn't going to take as long. It did take a little longer with those small technical issues that we just had with payroll closing, and apologies on that one. So it's now time to test your knowledge a little bit with a 3-question quiz. Now, this is completely voluntary. Feel free to get involved as much as you would like. The answers are completely anonymous, so don't worry. We won't be sharing who answered what, just a simple poll. So again, feel free. So the first question is a bit of a true or false one, which is about setting up a salary sacrifice. So the statement is you would need to set up a salary sacrifice deduction for a salary sacrifice pension scheme. Is that true or is that false? So you should see a poll on screen. Simply click on the option that you think it is. Is it true? Is it false? And hit submit. We'll leave that on for a couple of minutes, and then we'll move swiftly on to the next one. There is only 3 questions just to run through and a bit of a recap. These questions come through things that are fairly common as well. So these are things we get asked via our phone lines or even on some of our webinars. Okay, so I can see that everyone is getting involved. So thank you so much. We'll leave it on for just a couple more seconds because I am conscious of the time. Okay, we'll close that one just to move on. And what we shall do is move on to the next one, and then I'll reveal the answers after. So the next question, how can you assign a payment to your employees? So there are a couple of ways, or is there just one? So how can you assign a payment to your employees? Via global changes, via employee record, via enter payments, or all of the above? So is it either of the top 3, or is it all of the top 3? Again, very useful to know how to assign those payments and deductions, because again, you may be in various different stages of the payroll process and when you need to add one on. So it can help to know. Okay, I can see, again, a lot of you are getting involved, so thank you so much. What we'll do is let's close that one down and we shall move on to the next. So the last question, how does a salary sacrifice deduction appear on a pay slip? So you've set up a salary sacrifice deduction. Is it in the deduction section? Is it as a negative payment? Or does it simply not appear on the pay slip? It only reduces the gross pay. So 3 options there. How does a salary sacrifice deduction appear on a pay slip? Again, always quite useful to know in case any employees are questioning what's happening on their pay slip. Give about 10 more seconds and then we'll reveal the answers for you. We'll go through them as well. I can see Duncan is typing furiously away to all of the questions coming in. So thank you for your patience on that one. You can hear him tip-tapping on his keyboard as we go through. So let's close this one down. And what we'll do is let's go through the results. So firstly, we're going to share the true or false one. So this was about setting up a salary sacrifice for a salary sacrifice pension scheme. 56% of you said false, which means 56% of you are correct. So when it comes to pension schemes, you don't need to set up a deduction or a salary sacrifice. The pension scheme settings will do this for you. So there is no need to do that in any way, shape, or form. So let's move on to the next one. And again, we shall share the results. A huge majority of 93% said all of the above. And although none of you were wrong, because you can in fact add a payment or a deduction in every single way that is on that. So is all of the above is the correct answer in terms of the question. However, you are right if you said global changes. You are also right if you said employee record, and you are right if you said enter payments. So there wasn't actually a wrong answer there. And finally, how does a salary sacrifice deduction appear on a payslip? 72% of you said as a negative payment. 72% of you were correct again. So it does in fact say as a negative payment on the payslip. So you will see it as a minus, and then however much you have that salary sacrifice set up for. Okay, so that is the quiz. And we have run through that. Finally, just a bit more about some further support that you may have. So firstly, if you've got any further questions after today's session, we have our help center. So you can go and type your question into the search for answers section, where you'll be able to search for our vast library of knowledge base articles, some of which are included in the handout as well. So if you are downloading that, you have a couple of links there already. There is, of course, also your support guide. So you'll see a couple on there. Pensions, processing payroll, for example. So they are sectioned into various different topics. Webinars, I mentioned we have a couple on some of the features. So attachment of earnings being one of them. We've had pensions as well. You can access both the recordings and the live sessions here as well. So all you have to do is click on that webinars button right at the top right. You'll see it just up here if you can see where my mouse is. You'll be able to access those there. There are videos as well, and of course, if you have any problems, you can get in touch with us via the Help Center as well. There is as well Sage University. So we have sageu.com, which has the e-learning certifications, bite-sized learning, all free of charge available there, and is part of our very brand new Sage membership, Sage Masterclass. So do check that out as well. So if you want to further your Sage payroll learning, head on over to Sage University. It's free of charge, of course, to register and log in. And I would say about the majority of the courses in there are also free. So you can sign up for as many as you like, and you can do them in your own time at your own leisure. So it's now time to answer any remaining questions that you do have. So we will be going through and spending the rest of the time answering any further questions that you've got. Thank you to everyone who has attended so far. And if you are leaving us at this point, hopefully you found it really useful. Apologies for my payroll misbehaving today. We'll ensure that doesn't happen again. But we did get there in the end. So again, there is a bit of a short survey at the end as well when you leave the session. It is very important to us that we get your feedback on sessions and delivery and everything really, and what you want to see in a webinar to make sure that we can keep making improvements. For the quiz, for example, we got some really positive feedback about that, which is why we have included it. So again, let us know what you think. I'm going to go on mute now and help Duncan out to give his poor wrists a bit of a rest, because he has been furiously typing away, and help him out with some questions. And then I'll be back to say our final goodbyes. Thank you. Okay, everybody, thank you so much again for attending. That is the session all wrapped up. It's been an absolute pleasure to see so many of you on as well. As always, I hope you're looking after yourselves out there and staying safe, and we shall see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.